Charles, I don't know how many of our U.S. viewers are sufficiently early risers to catch us here in the international live time slot. How are you, Charles?
I'm great. It's a pleasure to be anywhere but New York City or Los Angeles or Portland or, for that matter, London, England. Um, and it's a joy to, frankly, be down here in Southeast Asia. I'm not going to say exactly where I am, but it's a beautiful part of the world. One so far in this trip that's now almost heading into the fourth week, I think. This is the many countries I've been to, the many cities in the countries, all are filled with people who are happy and flourishing and thinking positively about growing their own personal well-being and their families' opportunities and their communities and their countries, and they're positive, welcoming, unlike this trio of fucking goons who somehow managed to be installed and stay in as presidents of the United States. I mean, the art department has done it again. The smirks and the grimaces of these conflicted criminals, who, there's a common theme here. I know we'll talk about it later in the First Amendment Forum, but this revelation by Grassley that there were 40 confidential witnesses who had come forward for many years prior to the election of 2020 to provide inside information, evidence that the Biden family was engaged in a corruption pay-to-play scheme that probably is denominated. We only know so far about tens of millions. My guess is it's billions, maybe not for them, but it's certainly billions of value. It's been transferred by crooked people who pay off the Bidens to get tens of billions, perhaps, or hundreds of billions, emulating the Clinton Foundation. And we see this, Joe Biden, as recently as I'd say at the end of his vice presidency, he didn't have a pot to piss in. I had forgotten that he bought that beach house in June of 2017, after he was vice president. How did this goon, this Goomba, this imbecile, in 2017 to buy a second mansion 5 months into his post-political career? I mean, there's no way the deal that we talked about months ago and the tax return that we went through in detail months ago, there is no way that those $1 million payments approaching 10 million of declared income, there is no way that came together solely after he left the vice presidential mansion. There was planning involved. There's evidence involved. Now we know the FBI knew of this, and 40 different people had come forward. And you're telling me that the FBI is a legitimate organization, and that you're not you, Jason, but
Yeah.
there's no way that this FBI can continue to operate the way it is operating.
Yeah.
After 2024, there's just no freaking way. And now we have, remember I always talk to you about contrast. We have the contrast of the excellent 5-hour tape that you produced on January 6, 2021, what we witnessed, you and I witnessed down there in DC. Put that up in contrast with the staged rallies that were held both in Brooklyn, at Grand Central Station, and I think in two places in Brooklyn, at Brooklyn Bridge and in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn, last 24, 48 hours, and in London. There is no way these bullhorn using, slogan using, chanting moronic verse using idiots put this thing together spontaneously. There's no way. This was preconceived. This was rehearsed. They're using the same hey ho, the same ridiculous chant that was interesting in the 60s, but by now it's like, can you come up with a new rhyme?
Well, and pre-printed signs, the same signs.
And so this is just like, I remember when Hillary Clinton was put in charge of the healthcare task force, otherwise known as the first major fucking disaster of her political career. They announced her plan, having convened all these meetings in secret, and I happened to be walking through Grand Central Station when there were a whole bunch of pre-printed signs and idiots, demanding free health care or whatever she was calling for. moments after the details of her plan were released. This is the same playbook by the
Yeah.
same goons who are trying to destroy this country. And what it exposes, I mean, there are well-meaning Democrats. There are also a large number of what I call demon rats. And that is what you see there in Grand Central Station. These are people whose IQ is less than 50 in the main, who have certainly not bothered to study any facts and are picking up this conflict late into its evolution,
Yeah.
ignoring the antecedents, ignoring centuries, if not millennia, of persecution against Jews for various reasons. And to say at this late stage, however many years it is after 1948, that Israel has no right to exist, but these thugs have the right to do what they're doing, the end justify the means. I mean, this is outrageous. It's truly outrageous behavior. It's truly outrageous that Eric Adams is standing for this. But these people, by some reports in Grand Central Station, the police gave them 3 warnings before they started arresting. I wouldn't give them 3 warnings. I'd start arresting immediately. You know,
Well,
we have this idiot Eric Adams and this dumber person who's the governor opening up cheering the opening of the southern border under this idiot Biden, who was selected by this idiot Obama. And we can't, all the problems with Biden, we can't just say, well, Obama had nothing to do with it. Biden is president of the United States today because idiot Obama made him vice president in 2008. All right. So everything that is happening now that's negative is Barack Obama's direct fault. And Barack Obama is in there because idiot criminal Bill Clinton was installed in 1992, I would argue, and was protected from 1992 onwards by the same people who are protecting idiot Joe Biden and idiot Obama. And the critics are just too freaking polite. The critics in the mainstream media cannot say the truth because they need access to Joe Biden's administration to write their analysis of what's going on in Washington, D.C. and around the world. They need to just pull their punches if they want to get their people on the press planes and, in the various supposed press conferences that the administration puts forward. They need to cooperate. In reality, the mainstream press should be doing not the violence, but they should be doing what these people in the street are doing. I mean, they need to get together and say, we're just not pretending that you're answering questions when you don't give the press conferences enough time. You send liars out to represent you, proven liars who are dumber than cabbage, cooked, who just don't get into the meat of any issue. And now look where we are. We're on financially, which is what I care most about. We're on the precipice of a Great Depression. If interest rates keep spiraling out of control, we have an idiot as Treasury Secretary who says that inflation is transitory. And the woman is really. I mean, it's not because she's a.
Before we get too far away from it, I have something for you on what you've just said about the press that I think goes beyond just kowtowing to Biden or whoever to maintain access. I've mentioned many times to you my fascination with the history and advancements of motion picture technology, broadcast technology, and how it has affected the evolution of society. I think just talking about that and stuff, YouTube over the weekend has delivered me this video, which purports to be the oldest color videotape still in existence. And what it is a broadcast from NBC's brand new television studio on May 22nd, 1958, from Washington, D.C. And the chairman of NBC, or the CEO of it, or whatever, the guy who's the head of this, is David Sarnoff, who I know you've heard of, and I had heard of as well. But what I had forgotten or perhaps did not know is that Sarnoff was a brigadier general in the, I believe, the Army. And when you watch this 1958 video, it's very strange, Charles. In my opinion, if you swapped out Eisenhower for Kim Jong-un and took into account, this is from 1958, so obviously motion picture and television production techniques in the United States have advanced considerably since then. North Korea hasn't had that same trajectory, but this is so state propaganda right here, it's unbelievable. And when you look at the technology of the studio, and you consider in 1958 how expensive something like this would be to develop, to set up, Charles, I think NBC is a clandestine government project, or at least it started that way, and television technology itself was used exclusively for government propaganda, or almost exclusively for government propaganda. But unlike in the Soviet Union where that was known, it was hidden from the public in the United States of America. And I think that the tension that we're seeing right now is the result of knowing that this control mechanism needed to switch from standard passive broadcasting technology of television and radio to the interactivity of the internet, and everything that we're seeing are sort of like the side effects of the problems from each of us having access to essentially this same kind of broadcast studio, a multi-million-dollar facility that could only be paid for by the government in 1958, now fits in your pocket.
Yeah, we're using, we just set one up in 10 minutes.
Yes.
And the time it took me to get my end of it done. I'm sure yours took longer, but yeah, that's true. I mean, what has happened? I mean, when you go back to the origins of the country, and it's so important to do that. And of course, that's not something we want to teach in school anymore, because that would, deny the progressives the opportunity to destroy the country and remake it to serve their own selfish interests. But if you go back to the beginning of it, one of the core principles was that a Republican democracy, or a republic, which is what we have in theory, a republic can only function if the electorate is educated and involved and inquisitive and engaged in debate. And so back then, of course, there was no radio, no TV, no nothing. And the Americans and other English citizens had endured for centuries proposition where the king dictated what books got published. Not the king himself, but the king's people decided whether your book got published. And there emerged these pamphleteers, much like the internet before it was censored, who would circulate very interesting pamphlets, and some of which still you can read them today. And there were on every issue, there were probably important issue of the day. There were probably 500 different points of view, and very specific different points of view. Not hey ho ho, Israel gotta go, by some idiot who was probably paid $100 to use the microphone or the megaphone and lead his fellow gangbangers, around attacking Jewish people, which is, I think, what is going on here. So, then we thought. I mean, you and I weren't around when radio took hold, and then television. The founders thought this would lead to the technology would lead to a diversity of viewpoints, and instead, these willing idiots. What's her name? The senator from Minnesota. Moron
Klobuchar?
Exploded the, huh?
Is it Klobuchar?
Yeah, Kloba idiot. Who has now suggested that any videos and any references on Substack and any videos, I think, on Rumble should be taken down. Don't have credibility because they disagree, obviously. So much of what happens on Substack and Rumble is excellent work that the mainstream should be doing, but of course they can't do it because they're struggling financially to begin with, and their advertisers are less interested in advertising anyway, and they can't piss off their important advertisers. Who are they? BlackRock, the financial industry, the pharma industry, the defense contractors, all the people who should be exposed. The mainstream media is hobbled. They can't go after the Democrat Party or the Republican Party in a general election cycle, because they need the advertising. So, this is really a watershed moment, and we're either going to end up, everybody's going to be beige and eat mush and stay at home, begging to have their next plate of fried insects,
Mm.
or we're going to throw this yoke off, this yoke of serfdom, slavery, frankly, that is being thrust upon us by a collection of buffoons. And the only good news in all of this, we haven't heard from Pete Buttigieg recently because he's too busy making a list of all the racist roads in America.
Yeah, well, on what you're speaking about with Amy Klobuchar, I just want to remind everybody, if what I'm saying about NBC is correct, don't forget that the current CEO of the biggest free speech platform in the mainstream arena was previously the chairman at NBC.
Chairman, not of the whole thing, but of a unit of it.
NBC Universal, it says chairman at NBCU. What does she say here? Activity, about, experience. NBC Universal, the chairman of global advertising. Global advertising and partnerships.
No, but that's very different than being chairman of the whole thing. She was not.
She says chairman, but I'm just saying she was a very influential executive at NBC.
Chairman dash Jason, chairman dash global advertising. It's a level.
No, I understand.
A lot of these big, they give everybody
She's the one
title.
Who's misleading people, Charles. She wrote chairman. I didn't. I'm just reading what she wrote. Point is, big executive at NBC still controlling our access to information through Twitter.
I'm just making sure we don't mislead our viewers. That she is not.
She should be taken down for misinformation, Charles. That's disinformation, malinformation, wrong information.
It's truth and lies, and the public needs to get it is the public's job, because the public is globally 7.5 billion people. Exclude kids, is probably 4.5. That's a lot more people out there than any censorship team. And we need to forget this idea of censorship, because you're never going to be able to censor truth. Truth will out, I think, is an old phrase. I'm not sure from what. And it just takes time to get out. And we're seeing that. And frankly, the evolution of the work you and I have done together and the work you've done with other hosts. So many times, Crowdsource the Truth, now through 9, has been taken down, and for alleged offenses that are later proven to be absolute truth, that was suppressed because it didn't serve the interests of the deep state or the crooks who were trying to install Joe Biden and protect Barack Obama and protect Bill Clinton.
Yeah. Now, Charles, we also have a lot of stuff to talk about in the First Amendment Forum. That's going to be coming up in just about less than 15 minutes. People are going to be able to join us there on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. There's been an interesting development. There's some unhinged doctor on Twitter who was going crazy. I don't know if this had an impact, but she was saying, Elon Musk, you got to send Starlink to Gaza because the internet has been knocked out. Now RT is reporting that Israel has threatened to destroy Starlink. I don't know. Can Israel destroy satellites in space? I guess we'll find out. But I don't know why Elon Musk wants to keep sticking his nose into wars, taking sides. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I don't know Israel's military capability, but much as the United States has misunderstood the ways in which Russia looks at the anti-Russian activity, the evolution of the anti-Russian assaults that really magnified after 1992, much as they look very negatively at what's going on as the West advocates for toppling Putin and pushing into Russia and sending advanced weapons into Russia. Israel is not sitting there saying, "Oh yeah, we've got a plan B if Turkey and the other still closeted anti-Semites scattered across Europe who are in the NATO alliance. If this really gets ugly and people start whipping up anti-Israel passions, I would look for Israel to lash out aggressively. And very aggressively.
But aren't they kind of doing that? They're bombing the whole Gaza City.
No. I'm saying when the leadership of supposed allies like Erdogan, was in theory an ally of the United States, when he gives this does what he just did, and basically suggests states as the leader, the head of state, Turkey, says that he is going to demonstrate that Israel is a war criminal state. I don't think Israel is going to tolerate that. And this Erdogan is a criminal. I mean, go back into what was really going on in Benghazi and understand what he and his son were doing, how they suddenly got as rich as they have gotten. And, Erdogan's grip on power in Turkey is not exactly strong. You recall there were several coup attempts. He jailed his opponents. He is hardly, he shut down the press. He's hardly somebody that we should be idolizing. And yet, if you go back into history, one of the reasons I'm joking now, he supposedly won the Nobel Peace Prize for his brilliance, was to suggest that Erdogan was, perhaps the United States' most important ally.
Really?
This is Barack Obama said that.
What was his justification for that?
He's an idiot.
No. I mean, but what was he saying? Like, what does Turkey do that he could hang his hat on in saying that?
His surface level, I mean, the people around, think of it, who he was advising. Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State. You go down the long list of morons who were giving him professional advice. And the surface level argument was, here's a country that's modernizing. It's partially in Europe. It's partially in Asia. It therefore could be a bridge to the Asian pivot. It is not, a religious autocracy. It operates as a secular nation with respect for many religions, including Islam. And, Obama loved this guy, vested him with too much stature.
A lot of pictures of them together, Charles. Right here, he's saying, yo, Erno, I got Larry Sinclair in the back.
That's right. Send you 100 more Turks. But it's just, it's really disgusting. And, what happens is they really played us very well. I mean, they figured out the opposition. And I don't know if it's just an American platform of opposition or if it's a global structure that's trying to demolish powerful nation states. But they figured out that there were a limited number of entities they needed to control: the degree granting universities, the big ones, the big not-for-profits, big media operations, the big banks. As the banking system became more concentrated, the investment system became more just control these things. The healthcare system, and the insurance companies, and suddenly you could take an aging population in this country or in Europe, and you could scare the living shit out of them. You could say, listen, if you don't toe the line, and at the very least just pretend you agree with us, you're not going to get healthcare. Or when the time comes to get, consideration for potentially life-enhancing operation, we're going to, send you into Midas muffler for your heart transplant. I mean, you're not going to get the health system. When you go to check your 401k, you're going to discover it's in Obama's bank account. It's just been appropriated.
Yeah.
So they figured this out, and this use of the term conspiracy theorist, it slapped that on any legitimate critic. We've fallen for that for too long, and when somebody labels somebody a conspiracy theorist, I get very interested in understanding what that person is saying, because it's likely that person is onto something. And as we saw in the Chuck Grassley letter, the FBI's approach with criticisms of Biden was to label it as foreign disinformation. You do that right away. Well, the mainstream media can't cover it. People lose interest. And the plan to install another puppet as president, and protect him and his crooked family, stays in place.
There's another piece to that, though, Charles. I think by alleging that something is foreign disinformation, it sort of activates the capabilities that were enabled by the Patriot Act in these national security letters that have been so famously abused by U.S. District Court Judge Valerie Caproni. Chuck Grassley was among the members or the senators who admonished her for breaking the law and played a role in her getting kicked out of the FBI and fired as the FBI general counsel, where she was replaced by Andrew Weissman. And when they say you're foreign disinformation, they can then take that to a court and say, oh, well, now we need a national security letter because if Crowdsource the Truth is Russian disinformation, we need to spy on Jason as a Russian whatever. And this sort of language, it's like when the first day I met Laura Loomer in the Las Vegas Metro PD, they didn't want us going into this press room. And this police officer standing in front of the door said, you can't come in. And I said, why not? I thought it's a public press conference. He put his hands on his hips and said to me, sir, you're intimidating me. I said, how am I intimidating you? You're a police officer. You've got a gun and two police officers standing behind you. I've got a cell phone here. I feel like you're saying that as a precursor to beating me up or arresting me. And the guy was like taken aback, like I had just foiled his plan. But this is what they do. They say so-and-so is foreign disinformation and therefore national security letter. Take them off of Twitter. With that, Charles, we've got to continue our conversation here. In the First Amendment Forum, people are going to be able to join us in less than 5 minutes on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. 1 week ago, almost every Crowdsource the Truth YouTube channel was removed from YouTube due to the malicious actions of a social engineer, so people can get the legacy content for free on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. Become a member when you're on there to access the First Amendment Forum. We'll see everybody in less than 5 minutes.